Hey, hey, everyone. I think I'm live. I'm not exactly sure. I'm going to check it out. It is Friday, September 12th. I am Sasha Rose with Venus Wisdom, and I'm here to give you the Venus Wisdom Friday Live. Yeah, it looks like I am live. Great. And whew, I usually go live a couple hours earlier. I'm delayed today. I'm definitely feeling the funk of this eclipse season. And if you're not familiar with Venus Wisdom Astrology, this is astrology with the sacred feminine at center. So the way that I'm holding the astrology is in the 19-month cycle of Venus and the Sun. And that container, that flow, that lens really gives us this perspective of a heroine's journey. And so all of the other astrology can arise within that quest that we are on as women, as entrepreneurs, as leaders, as creatives, as visionaries in this time of great change. Anyone who's on a quest for inner discovery and to discover their gifts, to bring their gifts to the world, in my view, is on a heroine's journey. And most don't know that we have this incredible cosmic support through the Venus cycle, which was tracked by most ancient cultures. The Venus and Sun cycle is so precise that astronomers use it to measure many different things in the solar system. So I've been syncing with Venus for 13 years. It's totally transformed my astrology process, my astrology practice from more of a head centered, paper centered way of looking at the astrology into a relationship with the living sky with this sacred feminine at center, which you can access, I can access through our own bodies. And that's really the takeaway of the heroine's journey is it starts with Venus and the Sun in union. I really see that Sun energy as mother energy, cosmic mother energy at this point, especially since 2012, when Venus crossed the face of the Sun for the last time in our lifetime. And many indigenous cultures saw that as a change in the Sun's energy from masculine to feminine. And there was a lot of handoff from the spiritual leaders in indigenous traditions to the women and saying, now it's your turn. So there was this turning towards feminine leadership, towards a new paradigm. I resonate with that. I've had a personal experience of that. So however you want to hold it, I always honor people's different experiences, but I really see that Sun energy more as a cosmic feminine energy. And so that point when they meet is like the birth. It's like the daughter of Venus coming out of the mother Sun, being blessed at that degree that they meet in, which for this cycle that started on March 22nd was 2 degrees of Aries. And so the way that that works is that Aries energy infused with the feminine is the guide, is the overarching energetic theme for the entire cycle, which goes through October of 2026. So we have this opportunity through that movement of birth, of bold, creative inspiration, which Venus does very early in her cycle. She's the brightest, the most brilliant in the morning sky. And then she leaves home and goes on her journey. And we're in this slow descent for about 8 months where she is getting lower and lower in the sky. And every month she meets the moon. And these are gates, and these are correlated with a lot of different things. The ancient story of Inanna, who went through gates to descend into the underworld to see her dark sister Erishkigal, is one of the more popular templates that people use for that descent process. I stopped following and worshiping any goddesses quite a while ago. I was quite a goddess worshiper in my youth. I have a lot of questions about the early goddesses and especially the Sumerian goddesses. And a lot of the goddesses that people are giving energy to, I have real questions as to whether or not children were harmed in worship of them. And I have some evidence. I just found this this great researcher who is unearthing the real deal about these early goddess religions. So I don't worship them, I don't invoke them. I do think the myths are quite informative and they do contain a lot of truth. And that is pretty much how I hold much of the the history and the reality of this realm, is that there's always going to be some truth mixed with lies. And so it's really up to us to have an intuitive sense, a felt sense of what is true and what is not true. And I proceed with great caution around any goddesses, because a lot of these goddesses are connected to the occult and are connected to dark rituals that harm children. And so I really encourage you, if you're just invoking these goddesses, especially a goddess that's connected to darkness, like Kali or Anana or Lilith, that you just really check in with your discernment. Are you just doing that because it's become very popular and so there's this like stamp of approval on it? Like, really check in with your guidance. So my guidance is saying not to do that. And it's really come from this process of, over the years, taking off these layers through my own heroine journey, where I don't want to worship anything externally. I don't want to be putting my faith in deities or entities. And I was a very serious practitioner of Vajrayana Tantric Buddhism for 20 years. And I also just don't feel a resonance with those deities as either. It's just part of my process. And I honor, wherever people are at, but I'm just being transparent here that I'm not advocating for that. But we can really see this arc of transformation, a transformational journey through the Inanna story, and the other story that's very much connected to Venus and her descent and her re-arising, her ascent, is the Demeter Persephone myth. So we can contemplate these without engaging in goddess worship and giving our power away. And we don't know what's happening when we invoke those energies. It's not that I don't think they're real, but I have questions about whether or not that's wise to do. So this bright, young, feminine energy that remembers that she can create anything feels very important for these times, because I'm just so struck by the reality that if we had claimed our full creative power, we would never create this reality. We would never create the level of war and violence that is here. I mean, I would say women of heart would not create this, mothers would not create this. And so we have a process, we have an invitation to reclaim our creative power. And that's not about, having orgasms to manifest a new shiny red car. I mean, I guess good for you if you can do that. But I would like to see our creative power channeled towards, what is the culture? What is the new paradigm culture based on care and connection, reverence for nature, protection of the innocence, that we want to start to band together and create. And we want to start to connect with others that are creating it, others that are on the cutting edge. So my North Star in my astrology is Aquarius. And I often feel like, when I really listen and I'm really moving with that energy of forward motion, future innovation, that I'm not necessarily in the mainstream of what's happening. I've moved away from a lot of what is now popular. I grew up in a spiritual community, and I've seen all these layers of new age spirituality, and I've had my own exploration. So I'm not diminishing that for anyone. It's just not where I'm at now. I'd really like to see spirituality that honors our human brilliance, that really we have our own connection with source, that we don't need all of these extra cultural layers. Oftentimes we're even borrowing goddesses from other cultures that we definitely don't understand. We're not from that culture. We're just lifting that goddess and saying, okay, I'm going to work with this goddess now. So I don't find that necessary personally. And in this heroine's journey, that is the process of stripping identity, letting go of beliefs, really being honest. We have to have a high level of self-honesty and awareness in order to discover who we truly are and what we're here to do at this time. And so to me, that is the heroine's journey. It's a process of inquiry. It's a process of being willing to expose ourselves for who we are, what we're doing, the old patterns that we're bringing forward. And it is a process through that stripping away that we connect more with the truth of who we are. So it's a surrendering of the conditioning that we've been handed, that we've been told, both personally and in our families and in our society. And then through that, we go deeper and deeper. So if you want to go deep, if you're a deep diver, you are a great candidate for taking a conscious heroine's journey with the Venus cycle. There's something really different about doing it with the cosmos as opposed to on your own, which we do all have those journeys on our own. But when we align the two, it amplifies everything. It amplifies our awakening. It amplifies what we can see. It amplifies our spiritual connection. And I would propose that, regardless of your spiritual or religious orientation, we all have the ability to connect with source inside ourselves, inside our own body. We are a spark of the divine, and that it can be that simple. And so as we go towards this underworld time, Venus is in her descent. We have about 3 more months of her as morning star, and then she's going to disappear at the winter time in the northern hemisphere. So we're having like a doubling up of that theme of going into the dark, going into the deep. I consider the underworld time a time of deepening and a time of an initiation where we really have the opportunity to realize and connect with our own self-love, our own unconditional mother love, to find that mother in the dark, to reclaim our innocence with our own ability to love ourselves. And so here we are, it's September 12th, and we're in an eclipse portal. We've had one eclipse, and we're coming up to the second eclipse. And so I want to talk a bit about the astrology and share with you my perspective, and also to share a little practice with you. Let me just do another little check-in. I think I am live, but it looks like I'm live, but if I click on it, it's going to make a sound. All right, I'm going to do it and share with you my proof. Okay. Just wanted to double check. So how do we look at this astrology with the sacred feminine at center? I mean, we're coming through a really rough week, with the events of this past week being so challenging to see the world and the level of violence that is happening in the world. It can be overwhelming. And so that's what I want to go into with the meditation that we do, is how to center when things are really overwhelming. But before we do that, I will speak a little bit about the astrology. And so when we are tracking with Venus, we're remembering that that original Venus star, when Venus and the sun come together, that's called a Venus star or a Venus star point. If you follow Ariel Gutman's work, she has an amazing book about that part of it, the meeting of Venus and the sun. And I've combined that work with also really tracking her phases. I find there's so much value in her phases. And she has 4 basic phases: reset, when she's in between one cycle and the next and invisible to us from Earth; morning star, when she's in the east before dawn, and that's a longer journey. That's like an 8-month journey; underworld, when she disappears behind the sun; and then evening star, when she comes out again and is visible in the west after sunset, for another 8 months. And so there's this like life, there's this descent, there's this deepening or death of who we were, and then there's this re-arising and ascent that happens to emerge as an initiated woman, as a heroine. I consider this heroine's journey so appropriate for this time because holy wow, to be born at this time and to be making a bid to bring our gifts and to create the world that we want, that is a heroine's journey. That is a heroine's task. And These flies. They love to attack me when I'm on lives. I don't know why. Horses nearby makes it challenging to keep them all out. So we know that that Aries energy is holding us. So if you're a leader, a feminine leader, a woman leader, if you're an entrepreneur, if you are wanting to initiate projects that are really coming from your heart, this is a beautiful cycle for you because it's the first sign of the zodiac. It's a very big deal to have that Venus star open in the first sign of the zodiac, because whenever we see Aries, we know that that is a new beginning. And so we're in a new beginning energy, and we won't have that again for 8 more years. The Venus stars repeat every 8 years. And so there's a lot of capacity, there's a lot of support to start new, to start something new, to rebirth into what we're doing, to really release our past and our history and the way it has been, and to embody something new within ourselves. We have such an invitation for that in this cycle. So even though Venus and the sun met in Aries, we're in a Venus and Aries cycle for 19 months, then she's moving through her signs. And I see those as like chapters in the book, in the Venus and Aries cycle book. It's like, come learn about the Venus and Aries consciousness. Come learn how to be bolder, how to be brighter in your leadership, how to care less about what other people think, how to express anger in a way that is not harmful, which is something I think as women we've been conditioned not to express anger. And I just saw some study about women's health and this correlation to not expressing anger being devastating for our health. So we need to learn how to express anger in a healthy way, and that's Aries. But Aries has been pegged as war, violence, Mars, all this really aggro qualities. But this cycle feels like it's a redefinition of that whole sign, because we are in a new era. We are crossing into the age of Aquarius. And according to one brilliant Indian astrologer, Bibhu Dev Misra, the Kali Yuga ended March 25th, just 3 days after the cycle. And I really resonate with that. I'm like, yeah, of course, because we're in the tropical zodiac, we're moving into the age of Aquarius. Why wouldn't the two systems correlate? It makes so much sense to me. So we really are in a process of redefinition of what the energetics mean. Are we going to be about war and violence? Well, a lot of people are. I mean, it's been a very disturbing week to see people's reaction to Charlie Kirk's assassination, and just the callousness and the level of acceptance and normalizing celebrating someone getting killed in front of a whole stadium of people. It's been really disturbing. And then there's been so many other disturbing, the school shootings. And in California, we have 3,000-year-old sequoias that are burning down. I mean, it is freaking overwhelming to be alive at this time if you care, if you have a heart, and to see how things are playing out. And yet, when we look at the template, that's exactly what all the predictions, all the prophecies, from the Bible, to a lot of indigenous prophecies, to even, if you read Babu Div Misra's book, which I haven't read, I just seen some of his interviews, but I did catch from that just because it's over doesn't mean that automatically go into a golden age. We have like a 6 or 7 year period of increased chaos. And to me, this time is really a time of really choosing the timeline, because there's a timeline that's been set for us. And it's a trap. It's a fake golden age that's been well designed to enslave all of humanity. And then there's a like liberated actual golden age, but we have to be sovereign beings to choose that. And we need to keep in contact with our heart. I like to say that Venus is the golden age. Venus is the key Venus is the golden key to the age of Aquarius, Venus in her cycle, because in her cycle, she has a much a much longer and more powerful effect because the way that these Venus stars move, I mean, they have an influence over 100 years where she'll be meeting with the sun in the same sign. And so there's a whole clock to that that feels very powerful. And it feels like it gives her a transformative power equal to Pluto, but with kindness. With Venus, we have kindness, we have care, we have connection, we have bonding, we have peace, harmony, art, the natural rhythms and the natural design is all represented by Venus. So Venus is not just out there that we're looking to this cosmic force, but she's a reflection. I mean, look at her sign. It's a circle with a cross. She's holding up a mirror to us here on earth and being like, you are a creative being. What you going to create down there on that earth where there is a lot of suffering? So I think right now, it's particularly important to stay resourced and to not get sucked into the miasma on social media, which is easier said than done. But there's a sensitization with the ability to feel the collective suffering because in our astrology, we have the North Node in Pisces. So we're really being asked, the North Node and the South Node are considered the nodes of destiny. And we're talking about a sky influence here, a general influence for everyone. We're not talking about your own chart. If you have your North Node in Pisces, this will, of course, be stronger for you. But the North Node in Pisces is releasing the judgments of the South Node of Virgo, the criticism, the judging of other people, which we all have that voice in our head that just will never shut up, right? Judging us, judging others. It just goes and goes and goes. It's a big release of that tendency and the tension that comes with that. And usually when we're judging another, it's a way that we don't want to experience something in ourselves. It's a tightness, it's a defense mechanism, and it's also on automatic too. So this is a really great time to become more aware of what is that voice in your head saying all the time, and where did that come from? Is that really you? Do you really want to believe that? And how much is that influencing you? So that's what these eclipses are inviting us to do, is release that Virgo shadow. Every sign has a big gift and a big shadow. I love Virgo. It's one of my favorite signs. But the Virgo shadow is that kind of persistent and even can be cruelty in judgment. And right now, we have Mercury, the planet that represents the mind, very close to that South Node in Virgo. And then the sun very close to that as well. So it's like illuminated, it's on our mind. And we're seeing it play out. It's very visible if you see the level of judgment and cruelty that's happening on social media right now. So the invitation is to go towards the Pisces compassion and ability to see others as equally valuable as ourselves, to really have that unity consciousness. And we also have Saturn has moved back into Pisces. I think I don't know, I found that to be a really challenging energy. And it's not super close to that North Node, but it feels like it's Saturn there feels like it's showing the distortions in spiritual culture, in spiritual circles, in spiritual gurus, in spiritual, communities. And it's in its last pass where it's going to go back and then it's going to move back out. And I don't know, there's something about that. I could really feel it. It came in September 1st. I do feel like this backdrop of kind of malaise. I don't know if it's totally connected to that, but it's very personal for me in my chart. So it's a little hard for me to parse out like how much of it is just collective and how much of it because it's touching something personal in my chart. But that is what we're invited to do in that way, that these nodal points are our North Star. It says a collective evolution, it's an invitation. And so within that, within that eclipse portal, everything is amplified. Everything we're doing, everything we're saying is amplified. Everything we're thinking is amplified. Everything energetically is amplified. And we're between eclipses, between the full moon eclipse and the next new moon eclipse, which um, I'm not remembering. Let me get the dates up here for you. Yeah, I want to talk about the movement because there's some things that happen before that next eclipse, but it's going to be at that 29 degrees of Virgo, and it's going to be the moon and the sun together. And I think a real opportunity to reimagine that Virgo energy, because the 29th degree is also that degree where things can get gritty for whatever the sign is. It's like a place where the shadow is more evident, the aneretic degree. So I don't think the intensity is going to let up. So we have the September 7th lunar eclipse and the September 21st solar eclipse. And so we're in this amplified time. And how do we turn towards our heart? Well, again, look at Venus. She is in the sign of Leo. Leo's the heart, Leo's love, Leo's self love. Leo is playfulness. Leo is care for children. Leo is really inviting us into some high vibe, joyful energies. And that may be hard to find if you're really focused on the collective suffering all the time. So it's really important to take breaks and to not let your energy get sucked into that virtual world. So one practice that I find really helpful is when you're on social media to actually keep, some awareness of your own body. And it might be a good practice to see how much we disassociate when we're going into the screen. So to really be grounded when we're in the social media, because it is a portal and it is receiving our attention. It is receiving our reactions. It is receiving our emotional energy. And so how are you connecting with that Venus energy, that playful energy, that self-love energy at this time? And the other piece that feels really relevant right now, because we started this cycle with Venus and Aries, so I consider Mars to be the co-pilot of this cycle, is that Mars is in Venus's sign of Libra. And so there's this extra connection between the two right now. So Venus is in Leo, the sign of the sun. The sun is in Virgo, which is, pretty close to that south node, saying, look at our criticism and apply self-love. Venus is like, apply self-love to those places within you where you are criticizing yourself. And then Mars is in Venus's sign of Libra and asking us to balance, to find balance, to fight for justice, to be active in being a voice for peace, which is really interesting given the events of this last week. That Mars is in that sign, and in a aspect with Venus where they're actually connected and then they're leaving a sextile together. So there's that reminder, like there's that really beautiful energy right now amidst this heaviness in the collective to tap into. Another thing that I think is really interesting, and I don't always talk about all the minor aspects, but I do track Black Moon Lilith, because it's been so personal for me and the effects have been so felt for me and other women that I work with. Black Moon Lilith, it has a few different Lilith has a few different representations. One of them is Black Moon Lilith, which is not anything, it's not any object. it's not a celestial body, it's a calculation of the moons. I don't actually completely understand how it's a calculation, but it's this point that represents the darkest point of the moon. So it's an abstraction, but I find it to be quite powerful in its effect. And that is a point that is moving towards Mars and is going to have a conjunction with Mars in 3 days on September 15th before we go into these other events that I'm going to talk about. And so, I've been thinking about that and like how that exiled energy of the feminine, to me, the Black Moon, Lilith energy is the female energy that gets left out, and it can be because she's rebelling, right? The original story of Lilith not submitting to Adam, and then she goes and lives in the wilderness, and then she gets demonized. um and some people really feel like she's a demonic energy, and some people feel like she's a heroine for resisting that kind of dominance. And I don't know. I just know that that energy in a chart can really show a place where we do experience exile and we do experience being excluded, especially from other women. It does feel like it represents some shadow of women to treat each other badly. When we look at the witch burnings, um, according to some of the accounts, I don't know, but there was a pattern of women turning in women, and there is a pattern of women being cruel to women on this planet. And that I think that Black Moon Lilith represents. She shows us that. And so that is September 15th at 10:17 p.m. Pacific, that they're going to come together. But there's this movement right now of that conjunction. And I just read in my Astro Gold program, I thought it was really interesting. I'm going to just read this to you as far as Black Moon Lilith in Libra, joining Mars in Libra, for the collective right now. It had this little description. So this is Astro Gold. It said, "Do you spend too much time gossiping rather than getting on with your own business? And do you get entangled in other people's business? If the answer to any of these questions are yes, then this is likely the Black Moon Lilith influence in your birth chart." Now, they're speaking if someone has that, but I'm thinking of the collective right now. Like, how much are we getting pulled into these politics and these opinions about people that we don't even know, and getting so worked out up about it? And not to say that, it's not natural to have reactions and responses, but how much attention are we giving to that? And what is our business? Like, what is our business that's suffering from us getting pulled into the events of celebrities, the events of politicians, the events that are completely outside of our control? And I feel there's something to this, with Lilith moving towards Mars and the focus right now. I mean, I'm saying that from a perspective of, I feel like I kind of got sucked into that as well. So I think it's something to be mindful of and to pull our energy back into our world. And what are we creating? And especially if you have a business, if you have an offering, it's really important to be putting your attention on the right actions every day, to be growing that, to be representing that. And I will admit, like, I had a really hard time going live this morning. And that's why I was later than I had planned to do that, because I was just kind of taken taken out energetically by a lot of the stuff going on, and had to do my own practices to come back to center in that. So I guess I'll pause for a moment now and say that if you haven't yet given this video a like or subscribed, I really want to encourage you to do that. I really want to encourage all of us more than ever to support the creators that we resonate with. And so if you do resonate, I encourage you to do that, because it is getting harder and harder. This like wild west of being able to get our message out as entrepreneurs, as online entrepreneurs, has really changed, and it's much harder to to reach people. It's just much harder than it used to be. So it's more important than ever to support those creators. It takes so much time to create content, and especially if you're an astrologer, I don't think people understand that it takes a lot of study to be able to bring forth, what's happening in a thoughtful way that's not just a superficial way. And it's important. And I admire a lot of astrologers that go deep, deep, deep into all the aspects. I don't really feel like that's my role. I'm more here to keep our eye on this Venus cycle, and the other astrology definitely supports that. But I don't have the hours and hours and hours. Like if you see some of these astrologers that are doing reports, they really have to analyze. I mean, it is a whole art and science. I know there's a lot of pop astrology out there. There's a lot of like TikTok astrology that's not well thought out. But for our art and for me, my focus is really looking at how the Venus cycle and her movement can inspire us. That all takes time and energy. And so the more we want to have real, authentic, truthful resources. I know we're probably tired of liking and commenting. I think we're all fatigued, but it is important. So I will make that little plug. I'll do a little refresh to see if anyone's here. Okay. I didn't put out my usual reminders. So we'll see who finds this video on their own. So the thing that I want to share with you, if you have not seen it yet, is I want to show you this map of the Venus cycle that I created. And if you get my free Venus guide and connect with your own Venus, which is the first step in understanding your own deepest feminine resource at this time, you'll also get this map. So in this map that starts at number 1 here on March 22nd, you can see we've come through this journey, and that the next Moon and Venus meetup is on September 19th. And that's also at 29 degrees, which is interesting to me that the eclipse a couple days later is 29 Virgo. So this is 29 Leo. And that is a opportunity to, well, just go out and see it and see what happens. It's always to me an experiment of openness, open-heartedness, and opening to our own intuition, and having an experience of the light in the sky and how that impacts us. So that September 19th, I call it a new Venus portal, where the moon and Venus meet, the final degree of Leo, and really looking at our own creative energy, looking at our stories around our creative process. The moon is our conditioned feminine. It's really like our story, and a lot of it is what holds us into the matrix, into the patterns. Whereas I see Venus in her cycle with the sun as the evolutionary feminine and the opportunity to rewrite the story. So it's important to receive the story. So that would be a contemplation, how am I moving with my own creative fire, and what is coming up for me around the voice in my head around that, this criticism around that, because we're in this super Virgo time, right? How am I experiencing that? And how am I creatively working with that in order to make sure that I have time for my creative life, whatever you're creating, and how do I apply self-love? So all of that is going to come to a peak then on the 19th. So that is something to know. And then you can see that we only have 2 more meetups before Venus goes into the underworld, which is what that number 6 means, is she's going to disappear. And that's a deepening. And that's going to be, it feels like it's a definitely a time when people are less, kind of less consciously connected to that principle of care that Venus represents. Like it goes more internal, and it's a time to find it more inside of us as opposed to in the sky. I mean, that's the symbolic movement there. So that happens around 11:26, depending on where you live. And that is something to know and something to watch for. And then, we have our, let's see what else was happening there. And then, you may not know. We have the new moon, super new moon, solar eclipse on the 21st at 29 degrees of Virgo. And so in the Tibetan Buddhist philosophy, all of our thoughts, all of our prayers, all of our deeds are amplified 100,000 times on a solar eclipse. So that's a really good time to be very mindful and to be mindfully in a creation about what you're thinking, what you're putting your energy towards, what you're creating. And that feels important to just, for me, I always save those eclipse times to be more inner. And that is a Sunday in my time zone. So that can be a time when you can really go in and feel yourself and meditate and pray and whatever your practices are. It's a great day to do that. Okay, is there anything else that I wanted to say about any of that? I think that is good for now. And I do want to lead us into a little practice, a little meditation to access that Leo self love and to feel our bodies and be in our bodies. So, for this part, you can gently bring your attention inside your body. And if you want to close your eyes, you can. If you want to lay down or relax, you can. It is nice to just lay back flat if you want, or to have your spine straight. Either one works for this, but you want to relax your body. You want to relax into that uprightness if you're choosing to be upright. And you want to really feel where your body is touching the seat, is touching the floor, and to bring your attention inside your body with your breath. And to especially notice your heart center, the fire of your heart. The sun is connected to Leo, that is center. The heart is the center of the body. And to imagine the fire in your heart there, to just imagine this wellspring of self-love. And whatever you're feeling right now, to welcome that, to really soften to that, to welcome that into that sense of self-love, into that heart fire, into that ability to have self-compassion. A lot of our time and energy is spent resisting our emotions, and contracting with our body so that we don't feel them. So softening your head, softening your eyeball, softening your jaw. There might be a sound that you want to make. And softening your shoulders, softening your heart. If you want to put a hand on your heart, that can feel supportive. Softening your back and your belly and your hips and your legs, and just softening into your body. Bring your attention inside, bringing your awareness inside of you. This is Venus. Our inner interior world is the feminine. And then the external is the masculine, the Mars. So Venus and Leo, the heart. And contemplating that childlike part of you that loves to play, and that inner child self that loves to have some fun, have some connection, Be dramatic. Soft jaw really opens up the feelings. And slowing down so you can feel yourself here more. Slowing down to meet your interior peace. And allowing yourself to feel whatever's here. And to like welcome that feeling into your 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 open arms like a mother would welcome a child, whether that's malaise or anger or sadness or grief or frustration or overwhelm, coming into center, like really feeling the power of your center, you to be centered in you as the agent, the director of your life. And if you notice any of those thoughts, those critical thoughts, just notice them, that voice in the head. What is it saying? What is it telling you? What's wrong? And taking another moment here to really deepen into your heart, into your fire, into your sense of delight, if that's available, or even joyfulness, or like, what could you do today? It's Friday, it's Venus Day, it's the end of the week. Like, what could you do? One thing that would feel fun, that would feel nourishing to that part of you that doesn't want to always be so serious and always be so on task, and to have a little bit of playful time today. Is there something you could do for yourself? So receiving your own guidance, receiving your own love, filling up with that golden light of your own love from head to toe, from inside to outside. What if every cell could be filled up with that golden sense of, I'm going to love myself. I'm going to love myself more, not in a way that puts us in above anyone else or below anyone else, but I'm going to just love myself through this moment. And I invite you to get up early before the sun rises and see Venus in the east in the coming days. And starting on the 18th, and then we'll be there. The 19th, they'll be likely the closest together, and then the 20th, still there. Mark your calendar. And you can gently come out of that inner place and come back into the room. And if you want to wiggle or just let your body do what it wants to do. Sometimes there's some kind of release that comes from that internal checking in, deepening in. Thank you for being here. I hope this was supportive. And I will be back Friday. Usually it's 9 a.m. Mountain Time. And regardless, I'll be tuning in here on Facebook. And I hope that you tune in again if you enjoyed this. I'm going to put some resources in the notes. If you want to get that free Venus guide, that's a great starting place. You can get your map of this cycle and you can start syncing with Venus anytime, even if you've never heard of this before. And then if you are interested in experiencing more of my work, I do have a new offering called the Venus Power Call. And it is a 45-minute call that if you're a visionary entrepreneur, heart-centered business leader, and you really want to understand the power of this heroine's journey and the power of the astrology with this context that I'm speaking to, I have put this together so you can come in and just bring your current challenge, bring where you feel stuck, And I will give you this laser focus with this cosmic support with all of that astrology. It's different than me teaching you your own astrology, which I do in a deeper session called the Venus Wisdom Activation, where I guide you through your own Venus astrology and help you understand how this is your greatest resource at this time. So this call is just a very focused time for you to find the next step forward, to find your resources, to find the way that opens. And right now that's $222 to make that accessible for entrepreneurs, for business leaders that maybe you haven't heard of this before and you want to understand what this can do. What is the power of this Venus astrology that I speak of? So I'll put the links for that. Of course, if you want to do the deeper dive, I would totally invite you to do that. It's absolutely amazing. And it's like the Syncing with Venus starter kit where you get all of your own astrology and then really an understanding of what is the cycle and how can I move with it in order to support me to bring my gifts to fulfill my sacred mission at this age change. It's quite incredible. So I invite you to do either of those. And then I'll also put the link to the Facebook group. So if you want to come in there, I add more resources in there. Although it's getting harder and harder, even in the Facebook groups, to reach people. So if you get at the Venus Guide, you also get on my email list, and I blog about the Venus cycle. So you'll get those emails as well. So I hope that that is helpful and supportive for you on your journey. And lots of love. Take good care of yourself. And I'll be back.